Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer. Today and all week we've had the opportunity to talk about the legislative session that just ended last Wednesday, and I'm very excited to have with me by phone Speaker of the House, Crisanta Duran. Crisanta, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, of course. So I have given everybody else the opportunity to talk a little bit about their background and why they got into politics. So if you would like to start out with that for us, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, it's been my honor to be able to serve as a Speaker of the House and the first Latina Speaker in the country. It has been quite the journey. And when I first decided to run for office, I was in my late 20s. And looking back on that time, I think that I really got involved because I wanted to make a difference. And there were a lot of issues that were affecting my community that I was frustrated with, and I thought I could do a good job of bringing forward the voices and values of the people who live in Denver forward to the State House. And it has been a wonderful opportunity to be able to serve. I am term limited in January of 2019 and have to pass over the gavel at that time. But it's been a labor of love for me to be able to serve in this role.
That's fantastic. And you said you started in your late 20s. That's really early for a political career.
Well, I'm the daughter of a labor leader and an affordable housing advocate. And although nobody was a politician in my family, I did grow up being very much focused on how do we in the community bring people together to be able to make the change that we want to see. And so at the dinner room table, we talked a lot as a young person growing up about how do we make sure that people have access to good paying jobs and a pension that they can count on, access to affordable and quality health care. How do we ensure that people with disabilities or the homeless have access to a roof over their head, and that people who are working hard have an opportunity to buy a first-time home. So I think there were basic values that I grew up with that ultimately encouraged me to get more involved with my community, and always had a strong sense of trying to work with others to be able to problem solve and build community.
So that is really inspiring. I love that you were able to have such influence at home to want to make a difference, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's where it started is, basic values of wanting to advocate for justice and fairness for all. I remember as a young woman, young girl in many ways, traveling with other students to Watsonville, California, to advocate for strawberry workers who were trying to organize into the United Farm Workers of America. And they were advocating for higher wages. Many of them were working in unsafe working conditions, being exposed to pesticides and fields. There were allegations of sexual harassment and abuse as well against some of the female workers. And, I'll never forget traveling to this very small town and seeing thousands of people from across the country and really the world to advocate for these strawberry workers, and really working together to give a voice to the voiceless. And so there were basic values that I was raised with that inspired me to try and give back, although I never thought I would run for office. And actually, in my family, I think that there was a pretty healthy level of skepticism of politicians as a whole, like a lot of Colorado families. And so it's sometimes surprising that I ended up deciding that I wanted to run. But I would say it's been a very rewarding job, and it's been most rewarding when we've been able to be productive and actually get things done for the people of Colorado that were not focused on just the usual status quo political rhetoric, but that we really deliver results to the issues that Coloradans face every day.
And speaking of those issues, one of the exciting things that you guys were able to pass was Senate Bill 002. That's the rural broadband deployment. And I know that was one of your bills that you were excited to pass. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a great team effort, Republicans and Democrats coming together to make sure that there are additional investments going to all communities in Colorado so that access to broadband can become a reality. And we know that it is important to ensure that communities have access to broadband because it can be beneficial in so many different ways. I mean, it means job development. It means economic development for Colorado small businesses. It can help patients have access to affordable health care and help students be able to reach their full potential as it relates to education. So this has been something that the legislature has been working on for years, and it took a while to be able to ultimately get this solution passed through both the House and the Senate. The governor has already signed the piece of legislation, and I think it's a major advancement to really recognize that as we have such a strong economy in Colorado, there still are communities that have not benefited from that economic growth. And by having access to broadband, we're working to make sure no Coloradans are taken for granted and no Coloradans are left behind.
I love that. So obviously you do have a passion for helping people without a voice, right? I would assume that a little bit of the inspiration for that bill came from that for you.
Yeah, for me, absolutely. Standing for folks who may not have a voice, I think is always important. And I also have focused during the time that I served in the legislature on trying to be as productive as possible. I think at the end of the day, people want to see their leaders getting things done. And this legislative session, productivity was a top priority, and I think the results show that.
I definitely agree with you. We had Senator Chris Holbert on with us yesterday, and he mentioned there were about 700 bills. Isn't that correct?
There were a lot of this legislative session, lots of good ideas coming forward, some that were more technical in nature and more that were substantive law changes. But we did debate a variety of different issues, and were able to get a lot to the governor's desk through that process.
That's so exciting. I, for one, think that you guys do a phenomenal job. 120 days is not a lot of time, and the fact that you have to get everything done in that 120 days is, I'm sure, a motivating factor to get through those bills quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, I think that in Colorado we have a good process that is set up to be able to meet annually and bring forward different ideas. And, this legislative session, we were working down to the deadline to get everything done and passed and accomplished. But I think at the end of the day, we were able to go back and forth through some tough negotiations and end in the right place on a variety of fronts.
So, opposite question for you. Was there any bills that passed or didn't pass that you weren't happy with?
There was a bill that I really would have wished would have passed the Senate. There were a couple different ones actually, but the one that is on top of mind for me is a bill that I carried with Representative Faith Winter, and it was to codify best practices as it relates to how college campuses and universities handle the issue of sexual misconduct. And right now, with Betsy DeVos out of Washington, D.C., working on Title IX, there's uncertainty around how some of these cases should be handled. And so we came forward with a Colorado solution that would have been fair to all parties when allegations of sexual misconduct are made, but also that we was really focused on making sure we do not re-victimize victims in that process. Colleges and universities from across the state were in support of the legislation. We introduced it as a bipartisan bill and got through the House and unfortunately died in the Senate. And I do think that I hope in future legislative sessions that this bill will come back. We need to strive to make sure that our colleges and universities are safe places for everyone to be able to learn and to be able to grow, and we need to make sure we have fair processes in place when it comes to sexual misconduct.
Absolutely, could not agree more. And speaking of sexual misconduct and allegations, we know that Miss Winter had some allegations that went through, as well as a couple of other senators that were under heat for sexual harassment charges. Would you care to comment on that and keep a conversation open about it?
I think that we need to make sure that we take these issues head on, and our actions in the House represented that the intolerable would not be tolerated at the Capitol. And we need to continue to strive to make sure that women in workplaces across the state and the country, quite frankly, are evaluated on their hard work, their qualifications, merit, and skill. And nobody should have to feel like they have to endure inappropriate behavior to be able to do their job. And in place now, we do have an HR person that has been hired since we've been dealing with some of these issues. There was also an outside expert that came in and did a survey, and it's provided a lot of feedback to us and recommendations about how we change our policy moving forward. We also have in place an interim committee that is going to be meeting during the off session to evaluate our rules and policies and statute to make recommendations about how we move forward to ensure that the culture at the Capitol is reformed and that we have systemic change.
Those are awesome entities to have in place going forward. Does this make you, as a woman in the workplace, feel safer to have those changes implemented?
I think we do need to have the changes, and one of the things that the survey found that Investigations Law Group worked on, which was an outside expert that was hired to help us with these issues, is that there have been many people at the Capitol who have experienced or seen sexual harassment, but they have never come forward to actually report it. And we need to change our policies so that there is never a perception that politics can get in the way of a just outcome. And I think the steps that are in place to address this issue head on are definitely needed at the Capitol. And I think in the House, we already show through our actions that the intolerable will not be tolerated. There was a member that was expelled. There had not been an expulsion in over 100 years in Colorado. In addition to, there were leadership positions that were removed. And I think that, moving forward, we want to make sure that people can get involved politically and be able to reach their full potential based on hard work, qualifications, merit, and skill. And I think we're moving into the right direction to ensure that that happens.
I think that's lovely, and I am hoping that those changes for you are helpful to you as a woman and as well as everyone at the Capitol. Moving on a little bit here, I have to ask you, as you know, we are coming into an election year. And you did mention that you are term limited, so you will be giving up your gavel in 2019 in January. So what does this new governor mean for you?
Well, I think whoever the next governor is, it is an incredibly important role for the people of Colorado, and I think that there's a lot of issues that we still have to work on. I have 6 generations of family in the state. I grew up in North Bend, Nevada, and my family has a ranch just west of Trinidad. And, Colorado is just an amazing place to be. Everybody wants to be here. That is why we have seen so much growth and people moving in from other states and, across the country. And I think it's because of our quality of life that we have here. But I think that there's also, because we've had so much growth, and I don't blame people for wanting to be here because it is a wonderful place to be. But with that growth, we have to make sure that we're serious about long-term planning. And I think this legislative session, we were able to get through a transportation package that will invest in rural, urban, and suburban areas of the state to address our transportation needs and start to organize our roads, not just to move cars, but to move people. But I think, when we think about education funding and health care and the high cost of living and making sure that people who work hard in the state have an opportunity to be able to get ahead and tools to be able to succeed, whoever is the next governor, they will have a very important role to be able to set the agenda and prioritize policies for years to come. And I have not endorsed anybody in the Democratic primary. I think that we have an embarrassment of riches of people who are running and who are competing for the position. And, I think at the end of the day, I want to make sure whoever it is that it is somebody who is willing to put problem solving above all else.
I agree with you there. I also have not decided where I'm going with my vote either. So we have lots of people to look at and listen to before we can make that decision. I think it's going to be a tough run this year.
I think it is a year where there's a lot of momentum for Democrats, and I think that is because there are so many people who do feel like with some of the insurgency and, quite frankly, attacks that are coming out of Washington, D.C. about some of the values that we uphold and cherish, there's a lot of momentum to candidates who are focused on problem solving and are really going to carry our values forward.
Yes, definitely. Speaking of Democrats moving forward, one of the things that we talked about yesterday with Chris and Kevin was that we have both, right? We have Republicans and Democrats, and while some people think that we may not be able to get a lot done when you've got a divided government like that, I feel like we get a lot of the bills passed, right? We get a lot of them covered, and it's been over 50% for the last 4 years that we've had that divided government. Care to speak to that?
No, during the time that I've served in the legislature, I have served when Democrats have had control of both the House and Senate. I've served in the minority when the Republicans had control of the House, and I've served where there's split chambers, like these last couple of years, where Republicans have been in control of the Senate and Democrats are in control of the House. And I think what is most important is that we have people who are willing to put partisanship aside and put problem solving first. And, one bill that I think of that I carried with President Grantham 2 sessions ago was a bill to ask voters to invest new revenue to go towards transportation projects in the state. And I think it takes courage to want to step out of the status quo that can exist at times when it comes to politics. And, that bill was one that I believe that there were the votes on the Senate floor to be able to pass it, to come forward with a long-term solution to really be serious about addressing the $9 billion need that we have in transportation projects in the state. And unfortunately, it was unable to pass the Senate. And now, because we were unable to refer a measure through the legislature, there are outside groups that are working on bringing forward a ballot initiative to generate additional revenue to go towards transportation funding in the state. And to me, that's unfortunate because I wish we would have been able to successfully bring people together in the Capitol to refer a measure. And although I applaud the good work that is happening to come forward with a ballot initiative, I think that you never want to see partisanship get in the way of progress. And we've had a lot of victories at the Capitol as well. This legislative session, we were able to really make great strides to advance a variety of issues impacting Coloradans. But I think that it's important to have people with the right values in both chambers to be able to get as much done as possible.
Definitely. So as we know, we've mentioned a couple times that you are term limited. What does the future look like for you?
I'm going on vacation. I need a little bit of rest after a pretty intense session and pretty intense run overall. It's been such an honor to serve, most rewarding job I've ever had, to be able to, advance so many different issues, whether it was on workforce development, Colorado assets, so undocumented students could get in-state tuition advancements, and making sure that more Colorado students will have access to scholarships and need-based grants to be able to get a college degree. There's a lot I look back on and say, oh my goodness, it's just been an incredible opportunity and journey to be able to advocate for the people of Colorado. And at this point, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I'm still thinking about where is the best position for me to be effective and to continue to do some of the work that we've been able to accomplish at the State House. In the short term, I am going to be teaching a class at the University of Colorado about Colorado politics, and I think I have a lot to share.
That will be exciting. Is there, where can people sign up for that? Or is that, when will that be available, I should ask?
Yeah, so it is available now for students who want to attend the class. You can find out the information on the University of Colorado's website, and I believe that there are a lot of students that have already signed up. So if you haven't already, sign up right away.
That is exciting for you. So besides teaching, do you think you have more of a future in politics, or is private sector teaching maybe more where you're leaning?
Well, it has been a labor of love for me to be able to serve the people of Colorado and to have been able to work with so many people across the state, not only in the Capitol with other legislators, but with people who have gotten involved with politics the first time or have advocated for issues impacting themselves or their families or their community. And I think it's those relationships that have really meant a lot to me, to making sure that we have a government that is representative of all the people, and that you don't have to have a big title to come up with a good idea and be able to see change made. And some of the best ideas that I've been able to work on have come from, town halls across the state of people coming forward with ideas and thoughts about what we should be doing and what we should be focused on. And to me, that if I can be in a position where I'm able to continue to really ensure that we have representative government and that we have opportunities to be able to build our communities up by bringing people together, that is what's going to attract me to make a final determination about what to do next.
Well, I appreciate that. And I have to ask you in this last minute that we've got here, Crisanta, any words of advice for young women that would like to get into politics?
Absolutely. I think right now to see all of the women that are getting involved and running for office in Colorado and across the country, it is inspiring to me. And I think that at this point, there's many of us who have felt like some of our basic values and rights are under attack, and it should not be that way. The only way that we can make sure that our state and country gets to where we need to be, where women are evaluated on their hard work, qualifications, merit, and skill, and have an opportunity to be able to reach our full potential, is if we get involved. And you get involved by running for office, helping others, and supporting others who are running for office. And, while it has been the honor of my life to be able to serve as the first Latina Speaker of the House, it is even more important to me that I'm not the last, and that we continue to open doors and build pathways for people to be able to get involved and really make a difference. And for me, being inclusive in politics isn't just about being politically correct. It actually gets you better results. And when I look back on the last 8 sessions, I know for a fact that if there were not women at tables of decision making, if there were not Latinos and people of color at tables of decision making, we would not have come out with as good of results as we've had. And that's issues advancing, workforce development or access to affordable child care, Colorado Asset, making sure undocumented students have access to in-state tuition, advancing policies that are really focused on equity in education. So, by having an inclusive representation at the Capitol, we get better results. And I hope that people continue to be involved and really stand firm for the values that they care about and be willing to work with anybody to problem solve.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Speaker Crisanta Duran. I love that you've had a good run in your career, and I'm wishing you well for your teaching.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a lovely day. It's been a pleasure talking with you today.
It's been a pleasure. Come back anytime.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.